Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Bridge. It may be afternoon for you. Actually, I'm not really sure when you're going to be watching this, but thank you for joining us here at The Bridge. We are in part 2 of a series called True Virtue. Last week, we had a look at what it means to honor one another, and if you had a chance to be at Joy Camp on Sunday, there were some great conversations as we broke out. It's so great to see people to talk to them, to be able to see them face to face, and I've certainly been enjoying our times at Joy Camp. And if you can make it out, I encourage you to come out, and what we do is a little bit more of a discussion. I know that can be really intimidating for some people, but honestly, we make a huge effort to make it not intimidating. And maybe you've been at one of those occasions where there's a certain few people that do all the talking. Well, we're making a special effort to make sure that all voices are heard. So please come out on Sunday if you can. Join us at Joy Camp. And if you can't, that's fine too. Thanks for joining us today as we share in this. As I was saying last week, we talked about what it means to honor people, what it means to honor one another in a cancel culture. What does that mean for us? How do we honor people that we disagree with? And again, on Sunday out at Joy, it was great to hear people's ideas of how we honor people whom we think are wrong. Great conversations. This week, what we want to talk about is integrity. And I think it's a really good thing that we talked about honoring one another before we talk about integrity, because sometimes people will use integrity or the argument of being true to who you are in order to really disrespect or dishonor other people who hold different ideas. So let's look at integrity, certainly with the base we built last week when it comes to honoring one another. When we talk about integrity is when your behavior matches your beliefs. When your behavior matches your beliefs. Certainly there are many of us who know people that this isn't really true of, and to be completely honest, sometimes I'm really challenged with this. Do I actually live out what I believe? Would people know me by my actions to be true to what my words are? It's a real challenge, and I would say that nobody is perfect, but we should all be striving to be people of integrity, where our behavior matches our beliefs. The opposite of this is true. There's a definition, there's a word that defines people who lack integrity, and to me, the best word to describe that is hypocrisy, or to be a hypocrite. Hypocrisy is a situation in which someone pretends to believe something that they do not really believe, or that is opposed to what they do or say at another time. I love how Jesus addresses this topic. And there's a passage that we can read in Matthew chapter 23. And in Matthew chapter 23, the heading at the top of the NIV is all about hypocrisy and living with honor. And so as we look at this passage, Jesus is describing a group of people that he says really lack integrity. So as we look at this passage, it starts off, "Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, 'The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat.'" Now, maybe you remember last week that we talked about how we are to honor people even if we don't respect those people. And that's exactly what Jesus says on the heels of this. He says, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat." And then he says this, and you got to catch this. "So you must be careful to do everything they tell you." Jesus isn't saying what they are saying is wrong. What Jesus is saying is that you need to honor their position. You need to listen to what they say. But then he goes on to say, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Do you know of anyone like that? Very few of us would say that that is us, but some of us probably need to examine ourselves deeply. Are we actually practicing what we preach? The passage goes on, and again, I love how Jesus describes these people who lack integrity. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and their tassels on their garments long. Now, when we look at this, when they make their phylacteries wide and their tassels on their garments long, it isn't actually something that's real common to us. You probably are reading this and going, what is Jesus talking about? So I got a little bit of a picture here. This is a phylactery. And for somebody to wear a phylactery, they perhaps are a conservative or a traditional Jew. They would have a phylactery on their forehead, and they would also have one on their left hand. And it would include remnants or small passages from 4 different passages in our Old Testament. And they refer to essentially keeping the Word of God between your eyes, on your forehead, keeping it close to your heart. And when Jesus says this, that their phylacteries are wide and their tassels on their garments are long, another thing that would be part of the garments they would be wearing, on the 4 corners they would have tassels. And those tassels were to remind them of the commandments they were to follow. So Jesus is saying of these teachers of the law and of these Pharisees that they are showing that they keep the Word of God in their forethoughts, that they keep it close to their heart, and that they are reminding themselves that there are commands that they are to obey. Jesus says, you're wearing all the right things. He doesn't actually criticize them for wearing those things. It's what follows after he says, you're wearing these symbols of servanthood, of being faithful servants of God, and yet you actually just love the place of honor at banquets. And the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. It says that everything they do, they aren't wearing these things. They aren't wearing their phylactery so they'll be great servants of God. They're wearing it so that people will think they are religious. They want the respect of being honorable Pharisees and honorable teachers of the law, but it isn't really the law that drives them. It's the respect they get from people who think they are experts in the law and at following the law. They just love to be the leaders. They love to be the people who are thought to be important. And they want to be the important people no matter where they go. It's interesting then that Jesus says to his disciples, he says, but you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher. Jesus says, I'm the teacher, so disciples, apostles, don't be calling each other rabbi, because I am the teacher. And he says, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father. And he's not talking about your biological father, your adoptive father. He's saying, from a religious context, don't be calling somebody else father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven, God the Father. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. Jesus describing himself. The greatest among you will be your servant, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Again, part of our conversation from last week, how humility is what we need in order to honor one another. And humility is what you need in order to be a faithful servant of God. Humility is what calls us, not our desire to be exalted. If we desire to exalt ourselves, we're going to be humiliated. If our focus is on humbling ourselves, then God will exalt us. Carries on, way down into verse 25. And this is part of a section of this passage called the seven woes. I'd encourage you to read through that. And in verse 25, it says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law, you hypocrites." Jesus doesn't even mince words in this. "You hypocrites, you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence." I love this picture that Jesus gives. He says, you're so concerned about how things look that you forget what the purpose of them is. You clean the outside of the bowl or the outside of the cup, but you don't clean the inside, the part that actually needs to be cleaned. Can you imagine if you went to, I remember Bruxy Cavey using this as an example. If you went to somebody's house and they poured you a cup of coffee and there's floaties around in this cup, and you say, this cup is dirty, and you pass it back to your host, and they, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they take a tea towel and just wipe the outside and pass you back your dirty cup of coffee, you missed the point. And Jesus is saying to the Pharisees that you've missed the point, the teachers of the law. He's saying your whole focus is on how you look on the outside and what kind of respect you get because of your appearance. And Jesus says it really doesn't matter what's on the outside. Well, he doesn't say it doesn't matter. What he says is, blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will be clean. Jesus says, you know what? If you're cleaning the inside, the part that matters, the outside's going to get cleaned as well. It just happens. But you don't focus on the outside, you focus on the inside. Jesus goes on, he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites," once again, "you who lack integrity. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean." When Jesus says this, and I don't know, I actually serve on a committee for a cemetery, and our significant efforts are made to make it look nice. The grass gets cut. We have certain things that we do just to try and make the place look nice. Cemeteries typically look nice. And Jesus says, you Pharisees, you're just a cemetery. You're just a tomb that looks good. It looks good on the outside, but we're not focusing on what's on the outside because in every tomb is simple death, just bones. And Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, boy, you look good on the outside, but inside you're just completely dead. There's nothing in you of any life. Because if what drives you to religion is all about the outside and what people will think, Jesus is saying you're just dead inside. But if your religion and your faith is driven by what you believe and your connection with Christ, then your outside simply follows that. Jesus says to the Pharisees and teachers of the law, in the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Now, I want you, I'm going to pause, and as you listen to this song or sing along, I would encourage you to just consider these words of Jesus and what Jesus is saying to the Pharisees. And I just want you to think about that. And then when we come back after this song, I'm going to talk about some application about that to our everyday lives. when we think about this topic of integrity, and we think about what Jesus said, it's very clear that integrity is really important, extremely significant when it comes to us being followers of Christ. Jesus speaks of people without integrity as hypocrites, and we do too. Now, over the past few years, we have seen people fall from grace. And I honestly don't know if there are more people falling from grace now, or if social media, or if we just are getting more information. But it's been so discouraging over the past couple of years to see some great Christian teachers and leaders who have fallen from grace. It's been discovered that they lacked integrity in their personal lives. Very good Bible teachers who essentially were hypocrites. And so as we look at this topic of integrity, there are a few things that we need to understand and we need to be paying attention to. When we start in this conversation, I want to talk about really two definitions. Reputation is who others think you are, but integrity is who you really are. When we look at the Pharisees and teachers of the law, as Jesus describes their hypocrisy, he says that their whole attention was placed on reputation. And I think if our focus is reputation, we are really headed for a really troubling life. When you are worried about your reputation more than you're worried about your integrity, you will be led to do things that simply will lead you away from what God's desired plan for your life is. Now, I know the importance of a good reputation, and I want to have a good reputation, but my good reputation can't be based on my desire to have a good reputation. I want to have a good reputation because I am a good person, not because I've managed my reputation. And Jesus draws us into that. And he points to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, and he says, you love having a good reputation, but inside you're just empty because you don't have integrity. But if you have good integrity, then you will have a good reputation. So that's my desire, is to have a good reputation, but I want it to be based on the fact that I have good integrity, not that I've just managed my social media well. What is God calling you to? He's calling you to be clean on the inside. And if you are clean on the inside, the outside will follow. But if you are focused on the outside, you will make decisions that aren't in line with what you really believe and who you really are. Now, when we look at integrity and we want to question what our integrity is like, probably all of us think that we have good integrity. Probably all of us think that the lies that we have told are for good reason, or the cheating that we've done on our taxes is really the right thing to do. We can convince ourselves that we have integrity when really we don't. So there are three areas that I want to look at, and I want you to examine for yourself in your own life and ask yourself these things. Where you are most defensive. Where is it in your life that you are most defensive? Because there's a pretty good chance that it will point to an area of your life that is really, well, obviously sensitive for you, but it's sensitive for a certain reason. And if we dig deep into this, the areas that we are most defensive about often will reveal something about our own lives. I can remember over the past few years, people who were extremely critical of people who were struggling with their marriages. Extremely critical of people who just didn't get it right. And at the end of the day, you realized that the reason, or for some reason, they were critical of these people, they were actually struggling with their own marriages, but wouldn't get help. When people are extremely critical of people who don't have a good work ethic, sometimes we discover that the reason they are critical or have time to be critical of people who they don't think have a good work ethic is because they themselves actually don't have a good work ethic themselves. They've just been fortunate enough to have money. Where you are most defensive may reveal where you are struggling with integrity. What you don't want others to know. You know, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. But is there something in your life that you would be devastated if somebody knew about? Because that thing that you don't want anyone to know about will affect your reputation. And as we were talking about earlier, we shouldn't be worried about defending our reputations. We should be worried about living with integrity, and then our reputations will follow that. But if we are really worried about something, if we don't want people to know something about our past, then it is revealing that we are more worried about our reputations than we are worried about who we are as people and what we are living in our lives. The third point is what you criticize in others often reveals what an area that you are struggling with your own integrity. God calls us to live with integrity, and when we are living with integrity, we are actually less critical of others because we are more at peace with ourselves. When we look at a few things that are true, just a few sayings about integrity, this one is really true. Talent can get you to the top, but only integrity can keep you at the top. As I was talking about earlier, I've been really, really discouraged over time with people who were at the top, whether it's in business or in ministries. And they've got a great work ethic to get to the top, but at the end of the day, on the inside, they are living with this kind of double life. And on the inside, the life that they are promoting doesn't really exist. See, talent can get you into the top, but if you don't have integrity, the cracks will reveal your character faults, the things about you that actually disqualify you from being at the top. Do what's right and trust God with the results. Over time, I have been challenged to make decisions that, and I'm sure that you run into this too, there's always opportunities for dishonest gain. And if I am worried more about my bank account than I am worried about doing what's right, if I'm worried more about my retirement than I'm worried about whether I am acting with integrity, then I will make decisions that are bad decisions. But I have a God who is in control of everything. And he tells me not to worry about tomorrow. He tells me to live with integrity today, and the tomorrows will look after themselves. It's amazing what can happen with a God who is controlling our lives. I may make decisions to improve my bank account, and at the end of the day, the stock market crashes and I have no money. Or I may make decisions that are bad for my bank account, but at the end of the day, God blesses me another way, And I have so little control over the economy and finances that making bad decisions for something that I have no certainty for seems like a bad idea. Acting with integrity as God has instructed me to live, with the promise that He will worry about my tomorrow, seems like a much better idea. The one thing that I want to close with as we talk about this is that your integrity is easier to keep than it is to recover. You must know this. You must know this to be true, that if somebody has acted dishonorably or dishonestly toward you, it is very difficult for them to gain your trust again. But if your experience with somebody has been that they have been trustworthy all along, then you are going to trust them with this next thing that you want to give them or trust them with. But all it takes is one person acting dishonestly once, and you forever distrust them. You know that to be true. It is so much easier to keep integrity than it is to recover integrity. And God calls us to a life where we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. But are we living lives that are true to what we believe? Are we living lives true to our calling? Are we trusting God as we say we do? Are we living with confidence about tomorrow as we say we have access to? Or is it all just lip service to sound right and religious? Because one is what God calls us to. The other is simply hypocrisy. So this week, as you think about what it is to follow God, follow Him with integrity as He has called you into this life. And may you experience His blessing in your today and tomorrow. And may you experience all He has for you.